Ah yes, the government has shut down again. The machinery of the world's most powerful democracy has ground to a halt. Federal workers are facing furloughs, and essential services are in limbo. And why? Because the Democratic Party has finally discovered something resembling a spine and decided to use the one piece of leverage they possess in this asymmetric warfare against American healthcare. Let us be absolutely clear about what is happening here. 24 million Americans, nearly half of whom, according to KFF surveys, identify as Republicans or Make America Great Again supporters, are about to see their health insurance premiums increase by 75%. Not 5%, not 10%, 75%. For millions of families, this means the difference between having health insurance and joining the ranks of the medically bankrupt, between getting that suspicious mole checked and praying it's nothing, between filling that prescription and rationing insulin like we're some failed state rather than the richest nation in human history. And what is the MAGA response to this looming catastrophe? They lie. They lie with the shamelessness of a televangelist caught in a motel room, with the brazenness of a three-card Monte dealer on Times Square. Democrats want free healthcare for illegal aliens, screams J.D. Vance, that political weather vane who would sell his grandmother for a Fox News hit. They're giving healthcare to illegals, bellows Mike Johnson, with all the moral authority of a man who thinks the earth is 6,000 years old. This is, to use Chuck Schumer's delightfully unsenatorial phrase, utter bull. Complete, unmitigated, grade A bullshit. Federal law, not democratic preference, not some liberal wish list, but federal law, explicitly prohibits undocumented immigrants from receiving federally funded healthcare. They cannot get Medicaid. They cannot get Medicare. They cannot sign up for Obamacare. This has been the law since 1996. Anyone telling you otherwise is either catastrophically ignorant or deliberately lying, and in the case of the Trump administration, why not both? What Democrats are actually fighting for is something rather different. They want to preserve healthcare for what the government calls lawfully present immigrants, people with temporary protected status, DACA recipients who were brought here as children, refugees fleeing persecution, asylum seekers going through the legal process. These are people who followed the rules, who are here legally, who pay taxes, who contribute to our economy and our communities. The Republicans' One Big Beautiful Bill, what a name, like calling a tumor One Big Beautiful Growth, stripped healthcare access from these 1.4 million legal residents. But even this is a sideshow to the main event. The real issue, the one Republicans desperately don't want to discuss, is that their tax cuts for billionaires came at the expense of healthcare for millions of ordinary Americans. The enhanced ACA subsidies that Democrats are fighting to preserve have made health insurance affordable for people making up to $103,000 for a family of three. Without them, premiums won't just increase, they'll explode. The average American family receiving subsidies will see their costs jump from $888 a year to $1,593. And most ironically, the states that will be hit hardest are the ruby-red bastions of MAGA America. Since 2020, ACA marketplace enrollment has grown fastest in the southern states that Trump won, the very places where his supporters rail against Obamacare while desperately depending on it for their diabetes medication and cancer screenings. These are the same people who vote for politicians who promise to destroy the Affordable Care Act while Googling, "What happens to my insurance if Obamacare goes away?" The Republicans claim they want to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. What spectacular projection from a party whose leader gold plates his toilets and spent a quarter of his presidency playing golf at his own resorts, billing the Secret Service for the privilege. They want to cut waste? Let's start with the $2 trillion tax cut they handed to corporations and billionaires, the same corporations that are now posting record profits while ordinary Americans can't afford their insulin. Mike Johnson has the temerity to say that Democrats need to present a plan. They have a plan. It's called Don't Let Millions of Americans Lose Their Health Insurance. It's called Don't Force People to Choose Between Chemotherapy and Bankruptcy. It's called Don't Create a Public Health Catastrophe, because you need to fund tax cuts for your Mar-a-Lago membership. And what of the Republicans' own constituents? What of the millions of MAGA voters who depend on these very subsidies? According to that KFF survey, 45% of Americans who buy their insurance through ACA exchanges identify as Republican or Republican-leaning. 3 in 10 explicitly identify as MAGA supporters. These are the people whose premiums are about to double, whose coverage is about to evaporate, whose pre-existing conditions are about to become death sentences again. And for what? So that Stephen Miller can crow about defeating the radical left? So that billionaires can buy another yacht? The Trump administration has responded to the shutdown with characteristic grace and subtlety. They've frozen $18 billion in infrastructure projects for New York because nothing says responsible governance like using bridge repairs as a hostage. They've plastered partisan messages on federal agency websites blaming the radical left for the shutdown, transforming official government communications into campaign propaganda. They've threatened mass firings of federal workers, because apparently the way to make government more efficient is to fire everyone who knows how to make it work. Meanwhile, in a display of courage that borders on the microscopic, Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski has proposed, wait for it, that maybe, possibly, perhaps, they should consider extending the ACA subsidies. How brave, how bold. A Republican senator suggesting that maybe millions of Americans shouldn't lose their health insurance. Give her the Nobel Prize for basic human decency. The Democrats, for once, are playing hardball, and it's about time. For too long, they've been Charlie Brown to the Republicans' Lucy, always believing that this time, surely this time, their colleagues across the aisle will act in good faith. Well, Lucy has pulled the football away one too many times. The Democrats have finally realized that when you're dealing with people who will lie about anything, who will claim with straight faces that Democrats want to give free health care to illegal aliens, when federal law explicitly prohibits it, you cannot negotiate as if you're dealing with rational actors. This shutdown is not about illegal immigration. It's not about government waste. It's not even really about the budget. It's about whether we believe that healthcare is a human right or a luxury commodity. It's about whether we think a civilized society should let its citizens die from treatable diseases because they can't afford treatment. It's about whether we're going to be a nation that takes care of its people, or one that views illness as a moral failing and poverty as a character flaw. The Republicans want to frame this as Democrats shutting down the government to help illegal immigrants. The truth is precisely the opposite. Democrats are shutting down the government to prevent Republicans from ripping healthcare away from millions of Americans, including millions of Republicans. They're fighting for the Trump voters in Alabama who need their heart medication, for the MAGA supporters in Mississippi who need their diabetes treatment, for the red state Americans who vote against their own interests and then wonder why their lives keep getting harder. This is what political courage looks like in 2025. Standing up for people who hate you because it's the right thing to do. The Democrats are fighting for Americans who would never vote for them, who believe every lie told about them, who think they're communist, pedophile, lizard people or whatever QAnon is selling this week. And they're fighting anyway, because that's what public servants are supposed to do, serve the public, even the parts of the public that despise them. The government will eventually reopen. It always does. The Republicans will cave, as they always do when the political heat becomes unbearable, when their own constituents start realizing that the radical left they've been taught to fear is the only thing standing between them and medical bankruptcy. But until then, we have this spectacle, a party that claims to represent real Americans, trying to strip healthcare from millions of those very Americans, while simultaneously lying about it with such shamelessness that even Goebbels might suggest they tone it down a bit. The Democrats have chosen their hill to die on, and for once, it's the right hill. Let the government stay closed until every American, Republican, Democrat, or politically homeless, can afford to see a doctor without selling their house. Let it stay closed until we stop pretending that making sick people sicker is somehow fiscally responsible. Let it stay closed until the richest nation in the history of the world stops acting like it can't afford to keep its people alive. This is not radical. This is not socialism. This is the bare minimum of what a functional society provides its citizens. And if the Republicans want to die on the hill of denying healthcare to millions while claiming they're protecting America from imaginary welfare for illegal aliens, let them. History will not be kind to those who stood between Americans and their insulin. History will not forgive those who made cancer patients choose between treatment and bankruptcy. The Democrats, for all their faults, are on the right side of this fight. They're defending the indefensible, Republican voters who need health care, from the very Republicans those voters elected. It's thankless work, but someone has to do it. Someone has to be the adult in the room while the MAGA movement throws its tantrum. Someone has to protect America from Americans who would destroy it to own the libs. So yes, shut it down, shut it all down, and don't reopen it until every American can afford to get sick without going bankrupt. That's not too much to ask from the richest nation on earth, unless of course you're a Republican, in which case it's apparently communism.